Good afternoon, folks. It's 3 o'clock, so we can start. So good afternoon, trustees and staff. So welcome to the first audit committee meeting of the Peel District School Board for this term. I'm Jasper Gill, Associate Director of Operations and Equity of Access. As per the Education Act, I'm acting as the designate of the Director of Education and will preside over the meeting until there is a chair and vice chair elected. I now call this meeting to order. We will now have land acknowledgement.
The land upon which we work, live, and sustain ourselves is the ancestral and treaty lands of the Michizagig Anishinaabe, also known today as the Mississaugas of the Credit, the rightful caretakers and title holders of this land. We also recognize the rich pre-contact history and relationships which include the Anishinaabe and the Ongwe Hongwe.
Since European contact, this land continues to be home to Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples. As responsible community members, we value the diversity, dignity, and worth of all people.
Colonialism displaced and dispossessed Indigenous peoples of their ancestral land
and continues to deny their basic human rights, dignities, and freedoms.
We are committed to learning true history to reconcile, make reparations, and fulfill our treaty obligations to the original peoples and our collective responsibilities to the lands, water, animals, and each other for future generations.
The first order of business is the election of chair and vice chair of the audit committee. So these elections are for 1-year term. We will now receive nominations for the position of chair. Please raise your hand if you wish to put forward a nomination. Please know that a committee member may nominate themselves. Yes, Trustee Cameron.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Acting Chair, I would like to nominate Trustee Will Davies for Chair of the Audit Committee.
Are there any other members who wish to serve as the chair of the committee? So I have a motion from Trustee Cameron to appoint Trustee Davies as chair of the audit committee. Do I have a seconder for this motion? Thank you. Do you, Trustee Davies, accept the nomination?
With honor, sir. Thank you.
May I now have a motion that the nomination be proposed? Trustee Cameron? And second by Trustee Davies.
There's no conflict. No conflict.
So as there is only one nomination for the chair of the committee, so Trustee Davies is acclaimed in the decision. So congratulations, Trustee Davies. So we will now see nominations for the position of vice chair. Again, please raise your hand if you wish to put forward a nomination. Please note that a committee member may nominate themselves. Trustee Davies.
May I nominate Mr. Sinha, please?
So I have received member Sinha's nomination for the vice chair of the committee. Are there any other members who wish to serve as vice chair of the committee? So I have a motion from Trustee Davies to appoint committee member Sinha as the vice chair of the audit committee. Do I have a seconder for this? Okay, Trustee Cameron. So do you, member Sinha, accept the nomination?
With pleasure.
Thank you. May I now have a motion that the nominations for the vice chair be closed? Trustee Davies, second by Trustee Cameron. So as there is only one nomination for the vice chair of the committee, so Member Sinha is a claim to the position. So congratulations. Member. All right. So Chair Davies is all yours now.
Okay, just finished up item 3 on the agenda. I guess we go to item 4, which is the approval of the agenda. Can I have Trustee Cameron? Yep, second. Yep. Everybody in favor?
Aye.
We're all good. Okay. On to item number 5. Were there any declarations of conflict of interest in this? Anything on the agenda today? Okay. We're all good there. Down to item 6.1. Approval of the minutes of the audit committee of November 14th.
I wasn't here, but.
Oh, you weren't there? Okay.
With pleasure.
Okay, it's on the floor. Okay. Anybody have any problems with the minutes? Seem to be what I saw. Okay. All in favor? We're good. All right. On to item 7, delegations. Don't believe there are any. So moving right along here. Item 8, we're going to go with reports from officials and staff. And we'll start with 8.1, audit committee work plan. Ms. Charles, take it away.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. As always, the work plan is here before the committee, which covers the requirements under the regulation 36110. And we generally kind of go over the work plan just to ensure that we're covering what we're covering off in each meeting. Today's meeting, as the first point in our agenda, is section 6.1, which talks about the choosing of audit committee chair. So that has been now completed. If we also look at section 9.2 and section 9.3, it talks about board's internal controls as well as duties related to the internal auditors. So this afternoon, our regional internal audit will be talking about the REACT charter as well as a status update. And then moving to section 11.1, talks about the fact that we need to have 3 meetings each year, each fiscal year, and after this meeting, we'll have completed that requirement as we had meetings in September and November as well. And lastly, section 15.1 talks about the requirement to have a report that goes to the board, and the elements from REACT today in terms of the status update will be part of our annual submission. So the status update will be covering off in the closed session. Any questions?
Should I be taking them all together or one at a time? One at a time, okay. We put this up for, on the floor for receipt. Do need a second, sorry, standing, so we have a lot of information. Yeah. Everybody okay with it? Aye. Yep. So now we will move on to 8.2, which is the REACT charter. And Ms. Hack, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. And through the chair, congratulations to the new chair and vice chair. Item 8.2 is our regional internal audit charter. So the charter is something that internal audit standards require us to have. And in addition, the audit committee regulation requires it to be reviewed periodically. So since the charter was last presented a number of years ago, and there have been new members since, and in addition, because there have been changes to the template for the provincial charter, I'm bringing it forward again for review. So this is also something that I'll be presenting annually going forward as part of our annual report to the audit committee that we've started presenting each September. Now, in terms of the charter, so I have included the track changes version because, as I mentioned, there have been some changes that have been made to the provincial template. And that those changes came about as the result of a quality assurance review that was done on another regional internal audit team about a year or so ago. One fairly significant change to the charter from the way it was before was actually a change in the name. We originally had called it a mandate, but it was recommended that we change it to charter to be more in alignment with the language used by our professional body. Another change that was made is actually a slight variation from the provincial template. So at the bottom of the first page, we had made an addition that's specific to our region to reflect the fact that there's a coordinating and steering committee in place within our region in particular that helps to oversee the REACT. So it was suggested at that committee level that we add some language regarding that. I won't go through the remaining changes as they're basically minor in nature and more, just to clean up the wording of the charter or as well just to clarify a few things, but I'd be happy to further discuss if you'd like. Once the audit committee is happy with the charter, so that as per the template, it needs to be signed by the chair, the director, and then myself as well, where indicated on the fourth page. So that concludes my presentation of the charter, and I'd be happy to take any questions from committee members.
Thank you very much for that. Any questions? Oh, yes. Members, so.
Through you, Chair. Can you talk a little bit more about the coordinating steering committee and what their mandate is?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Chair. So the Coordinating and Steering Committee is a committee made up of senior business officials from each of the 6 boards in the region, and we meet about every 2 months within the school year, just to discuss items that relate to regional internal audit. So this was a committee that was created a number of years back when York Catholic took up the role as host board, just as a way of helping with the startup and then just helping to oversee the ongoing operations. So things that I would present would typically include the regional internal audit budget, things like our dashboards and progress to plan, hours versus planned hours versus actual hours. And then other things would include discussion of our internal quality assurance review before the results would go to the audit committee in our September report.
Thank you.
Trustee Cameron?
Thank you. Through you, Chair, hoping everyone will appreciate that this is a rookie at the table for the first time in 13 years on board. So questions may seem innocent to you, but they're new to me. and I'm not sure who answers this, maybe Controller Letitia Charles as well, but I did what many trustee members did. We went on the training session and listened and learned, and I found that very helpful. May I also add, I appreciate the terms. As a new person to the table, I appreciate the definition of the terms included here. I did hear, and I'm really looking for some guidance on this. I heard one of the speakers say, a question you should be asked at every audit committee meeting is our board at risk of any fraud? And so I'm really two things. One is that something that should be asked at every, it was the advice of the speaker. Let me start with that through you, Chair. Is that appropriate?
You can certainly ask, absolutely, through you, Chair. The audit committee is one of the committees that does oversee the risk of the board, so certainly that is a fair question to ask. And generally, the way we protect the board in terms of fraud or any other kind of risk is look at our controls, right? So one of the things that we do through REACT, we look at our risk universe, we assess the risk for each type of activity that we do. So there's financial risk and there's non-financial risk. So the good thing with regional internal audit, they cover kind of the whole universe of financial and non-financial. So for example, a risk could be something in spec ed. So it might not have financial implications, but it could have a public scrutiny or reputational risk, right? So that's that kind of risk. The risk that you're talking about is fraud, which predominantly is a financial type of risk. And so REACT does do some work in the financial area, but we also have our external auditors. So again, the external auditors, when they do our financial review every year, they will come and talk about what is the magnitude of fraud that they are looking for. And again, we're a large board, so their magnitude that they're looking at is relatively large, but certainly would be happy to answer any questions around what kind of controls we have in the finance department around that, because the finance department also oversees to some degree the schools, because we help to implement the procedures within the schools. Even though the schools don't report directly to us, we do ask them to implement certain controls. And then we have our own internal audit, which is Renee's group, that will look at controls when they go out to the schools, and they will test them as well. So the way we kind of mitigate the risk of fraud is by having internal controls. And you can never have no fraud because, again, that's, we're dealing with money. There's always a potential, but we try and mitigate it by having the right internal controls in place.
Thank you. Go ahead.
So through the chair, Davies, if I can just add to what Controller essentially mentioned, it is also, once the staff is aware of a fraud, it is also our responsibility to make sure that the audit committee is aware. So obviously, as a member, you can ask questions, but it is also our responsibility, staff responsibility, that once we are aware of a fraud, to advise make sure the audit committee is aware of it.
Thank you both. That's very helpful. And I will say that when I listened to that training session, the question in my mind was, well, wouldn't staff bring that anyways? If there was a risk for the board, why would we have to ask for it every meeting? So I commit to not asking that every meeting, but to listen for your reports should there be such risk. Thank you both very much for your chair.
I just always assumed that other boards didn't have staff as good as ours. Okay, so can we put this on the floor, please? Trustee Karen, second up.
Discussion?
Everything's okay? Okay. All right. Let's get that through. Let's move on to 8.3, the 2022 annual report on access requests. Part of the Municipal Freedom of Information. Ms. Lockyer.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. The purpose of this report is to provide information on access requests received by the board during the 2022 year under the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. This report is part of the accountability and good governance framework and measures to publicly report on this information. So in 2022, the board received 16 requests, all of which were completed during the year within the legislative timeline of 30 days or less, with 100% compliance. One request is being appealed by the requester and the third party that was involved with the request. 2 requests were abandoned by the requesters, and a total of $293 was paid for access to records. And that's all my report. Thank you. If any questions, have to answer.
Is there no questions there? Can someone throw this on the floor? Trustee Cameron? Just in a second. Everybody's okay? Fantastic, sir. So now we move down to Number 9, trustee motions for consideration, seeing none. And now we're on to number 10, trustee notices of motion. Anybody? No, we're all good. Okay, so can I have a motion to convene into closed session? We're back to the open session. Item number 12, we are rising reporting from closed session. In closed session, we had a report from the Internal Audit Service Summary, and we had a report from the PDSB Regional Internal Audit Update of March 2023. Could I have these put on the floor? Trustee Cameron, second by Mr. Senna. Everything's okay with it? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Excellent. So now we are on item number 13. That is adjournment. I have a motion to adjourn. Trustee Cameron, thank you. Second by Mr. Senna. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.